happened with that first shot, but let's hope that there are better ones to come. It was around 1 in the afternoon, and I think this was before the tidal rise. Somehow at this beach there is a statue that's immersed in water half of the time. Just look at the waves, you'd know that it was a super windy day. We went in for lunch for about an hour or so, but this is what we saw when we came out. It was crazy. All of a sudden, the pools filled themselves. Not sure if it was intentional, but it was begging for a photo. Stumbled across this valley that would lead all the way to the waters if we were to go all the way down. But we didn't have to. This was a perfect place to recreate the good old Insta post. When photos were still a thing, of course, on Insta. You know what I mean. Now that I've sat down to do this video, I actually did recall more and more as to what happened on that day, and so in this bit of the video I'm gonna troubleshoot all the stuff that went wrong basically in this role and shamelessly share with you some of my big time failings in this role. Let's go. Cool, so first of all let's look at this shot over here. That was the first shot of the day and this was the first frame on the roll. As you can see, the bottom part of this image was truncated, the white bits were basically accidentally exposed, and also comparing this frame with the rest of the frames on this roll, this image has a singular magentish cast over it, and the tools seem generally cooler towards the purplish bluish side. I remember when I got the batch of photos back from my film lab, I was delusional for like at least 2 minutes because this was a super stupid mistake that should not have happened. I was spooling my film across the camera beyond the point where the arrow has hit one side of the frame, and so this perfectly explains why the first bit of the entire roll of film was exposed. And maybe because of that, this frame also experienced some level of fogging that was not present in other frames. What a bummer. This was actually the only shot that was actually like in focus in my entire roll. Now on to this image, which is a second image of the roll. I think it's alright, it looks fine to me as of now, but if I were to do it again, I would rather that I had pointed my camera lower, so I wish that I had cut out more of the sky and included more of the waters down below. The version that you've seen just now is the one that I've edited on top of the edits from my lab. I cropped in slightly because I think that there was too much sky and the sky wasn't particularly interesting, and so I think it kind of threw the balance off of this shot. So yeah, as I've said, were I to do it again, I would perhaps tilt my camera further downwards and include more of this water that's outside of the frame obviously, instead of the sky, which is pretty black. And this, I now realize, might very well be the first time I've ever shot in this wind on my TLR, and it did teach me quite a few lessons, because in many of these shots there was motion blur, which ironically was something that I expected. At the moment of firing the shutter, I was basically swaying in the wind. I couldn't even balance myself in the wind. I was moving, the grass, the plantations were moving, and basically everything was moving. And that's why in many of these shots there was considerable motion blur. It's not like the end of the world because you do only see those when you blow it up, say full screen. From my notes, I see that many of these shots were made using a shutter speed of 1/125th of a second, which obviously is not fast enough. And so if I were to shoot in such strong wind, which I doubt, but if I were to do it anyway, I might consider doing it using a shutter speed of 1/300th of a second. Oh, yeah, and this shot, this actually came as a bit of a surprise. I thought that it was gonna come out horrendously underexposed. So at the time the sky was fully overcast. The sun was gone and there was like a heavy overcast, and we were in this really deep valley. It was so deep that literally the amount of light that could hit onto where we were standing was insignificant. But the thing was that I had some frames left on my roll and I did not want to carry it over until like the next time that I shoot in color, which is who knows when. And so I decided to just give it a go and just took the shot of Jimmy, my friend, taking a photo. To be fair, there is quite a bit of color cast in the bottom part of the frame, aka the shadows of the frame, which probably is typical of underexposed areas. The colors are obviously more mushy and less well separated in the bottom of the frame, and I think this is perhaps also because of the scanner trying to work harder to bump up the values in those areas. When I went to Aperture, which is the lab that developed this roll of film for me, I specifically asked if they were gonna push it for me and whether or not it would push well. And they were like, oh, don't even bother pushing it. Portra 160 has an amazing dynamic range and that it will work well from -2 to +3 below or above box speed. I was honestly skeptical. I don't think you can see it in the video footage because video, it's exposed slightly differently from how you would expose a photo, but then it was just really dark. Trust me, it was really dark. It was just so dark. But since Aperture advised me to just go with standard development, I decided to maybe just give it a shot and hope for the best. And in the end, this is what I got. Obviously it could have been better in the shadows if I were able to further lower my aperture to say 2.8 or something, but that's just not really common on medium format cameras, and so I think it's acceptable. In the end though, despite my effort in trying to finish off the entire roll before I leave back to London, I was not successful because the sun went down pretty soon and it was clear that we would not have enough light to expose this roller film properly. And so all I could do was to finish off the roller film back in London. And so this was actually London. Look at this, the colors look absolutely unreal. Let me show you the raw file as well. That's the file that came straight from the lab. I did not actually change any settings on the colors. I merely changed the whites, the blacks, and adjusted the highlights to reduce it a little bit, and also raise the shadows a little bit. But then the colors simply look so saturated that it looks almost unreal. This is perhaps Portra at its best. So as usual, all of the shots will be lined up in the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next Saturday. Bye!